Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, Toastmasters, and welcome to this Zoom Master training for District 69's online speech contests for this year. My name is Mark Snow. I am the District 69 Program Quality Director, and it is my privilege this year to be overseeing and supervising speech contests right across our district. Now, since TI announced that speech contests above the club level were going to be online this year, there's been some anxiety around how we can make this happen, because it is very much the first time that District 69 has been running speech contests online. But what today's session will hopefully show you is that it's much easier than it sounds, and that there are lots of tools and resources available to help you along the way. Now, for this session, we are going to be covering off the basic roles and the instructions for Zoom Masters for online speech contests. But ultimately, as informative as I hope this session is, there's going to be no substitute for practice, rehearsals, preparation. Like, that is what's going to make your life a lot easier as a Zoom Master and ensure that everything goes smoothly on the day. Above all, bear in mind that our objective with speech contests is to keep everything supremely simple. We are trying to select a contest winner to go on to the next level, not to overcomplicate things unnecessarily. So with that, I'm going to introduce some of my little co-workers here today. Now, for those of you, most of you may know that I'm a huge Disney kid and a big Disney fan, so I've drafted some of my favorite Disney characters to help with some of the demonstrations on today's session. Now, we're going to be using a number of documents as resources, so they'll be posted onto the District 69 website for you to refer to as well, but I'll just show them to you now. So first and foremost is going to be our speech contest rulebook, which I think you can all see here. Now, this is the current version, so it has Aaron Beverly, last year's World Champion of Public Speaking, on the front of it. Make sure that you are using the current version. There are changes from year to year, and we want to make sure that you're using the right one. Now, after that, we have this document, which has been prepared by District 72 in New Zealand South, and it's all about how to run an online speech contest successfully. Now, they ran their contests online in the last Toastmasters year very well, and they've documented all of their instructions, and that's what we're going to be using here in District 69 this year as the foundation for our speech contests. Now, that is fundamentally where we're up to. There's also other resources available, again, on the district website, on the Toastmasters International website, but the other tool that you'll need as a Zoom Master running a speech contest at an area or division level, or indeed even a district level, is access to the District 69 Zoom accounts. Now, District does have a number of paid accounts that we are making available to areas and divisions to run their speech contests on, and it's very important that if you don't already have access to these, get in touch with your area director or division director, and they'll be able to get you set up so you can set up the meeting and ensure all of the settings are ready to go, and that you've got time to practice and to become really familiar with the dashboard before we get into the actual event. Now, today we're using my dashboard, and you can see all of the controls. This is all of the controls that you will have as the host of a meeting. We're going to explain those as we go along. But before we get started, it's important to sort of note just what we will be covering and what we won't be covering. So because we are focusing very much on the Zoom Master role, we're not going to be jumping into the nuts and bolts of how to judge a speech contest. There's a number of resources, a number of different sessions that are out there to help you with that. We're also not going to be jumping into a lot of the contest planning and the contest briefing content. That's all very much covered in the District 72 guide, and the speech contest rulebook. So please use those. They will cover what you need to know. And because our district is only running the International and the Humorous speech contests this Toastmasters year, we're not going to be diving into how you would set up Zoom rooms for the table topics or the evaluation contests. If we do find ourselves in a position next Toastmasters year where we are having to run all 4 contests online, we'll run a new session and we'll cover all of the details of those particular contests. So with that, let's get started. Let's jump into what you need to do and what you need to know as a online speech contest Zoom Master. We're going to sort of take it very much in a chronological view from what you need to do beforehand through to what happens in the contest and all of the particular things that might crop up afterwards. So with that, we're going to get started with what happens before the contest itself actually starts. So we're going to work on the assumption that it's the day of the contest, and as the Zoom master, you're logging in early. It's certainly highly recommended that you leave at least a good 30 minutes before the start of the actual contest for you and the other officials to arrive and to familiarize yourself and to make sure that you can get everything that needs to be done before the contest starts done, because that's what's going to ensure that the whole day runs smoothly and that there aren't any missed steps along the way. Now, depending on the amount of contestants that are in your contest, you're going to need overall a period of around 90 minutes to 2 hours for your average international or humorous speech contest. So 90 minutes if you've got, say, 4 contestants, maybe 2 hours if you have 6 contestants. And that includes the 30 minutes at the front for this preparation time. So make sure that you factor that in with your contest organizers when you're setting things up. So the first thing that we need to do before we even necessarily jump into the meeting is to ensure that we've got the right settings on our online speech contest, because we want to ensure that we've got some of these in place, and it will make things a lot easier for us as Zoom masters to manage the flow of the event throughout the day. So we're just going to jump in right now. Now, in the district Zoom accounts, you'll have the option. So if I go, for instance, just back to profile, when you jump in, you'll see the Zoom profile. To set up the online meeting, you need to click on Schedule Meeting up here at the top. And when you do that, it'll come up with all of the options that you need to input to set up your meeting. So the topic, so for instance, Area 4, online speech contests, and then the details and so on. And this will put it into the calendar and ensure that no one else can schedule their contest over the top of you. There are a few key settings that you do need to know before the contest actually starts and you actually start the meeting. So the first one is the waiting room right here in the middle. The waiting room is going to give you the ability to manage who comes in to the speech contest and when. We'll talk a little bit about that shortly. That's the main one. And then the other one that's really useful is to mute participants on entry. Now that will ensure that anyone coming into the speech contest isn't going to accidentally disrupt anyone who might be speaking. So those are 2 key settings to make sure. Beyond that, everything else is fairly straightforward and will be ready for you to go. So let's talk the waiting room, because as the Zoom master, and again, I've renamed myself here ZM to show that I'm the Zoom master. The waiting room is all about managing who's in the same way that you might have sergeants at arms in a face-to-face contest, managing who comes in and out of the rooms at the appropriate times. As the Zoom master, you're basically the online sergeant at arms. You have that role in controlling who comes in and who comes out. And you will be assisted by the actual sergeant at arms on the day too, but as the host of the meeting, you're going to have those rights too. So the first things that you need to know about the waiting room, so it's using it judiciously in terms of managing who's meant to be in the room, in the meeting and the contest at the right time. It also avoids unwanted distractions, confusion, and also particularly unfortunate situations where you might have, for instance, contestants coming into the main contest room while the judges are still briefing and still getting themselves sorted, so they might find out who the judges are, which we're obviously trying to avoid because we want our judges to be anonymous. In order to make sure that you're allowing the right people at the right times, work with your contest organizers, get a list of who all the officials are going to be, and make sure that you're letting in the appropriate people at the appropriate time. So I would suggest the chief judge, the judges all coming in first, getting themselves sorted in terms of anonymizing and off to any briefing rooms that they might need to move to. Then after that, bringing in the contestants and the officials to ensure that they're all getting themselves set up appropriately. And then from there, we can, once everything's ready to go, bring in the rest of the audience. The key thing is not to bring too many people in at once, because it just makes your life a little bit more difficult as the Zoom master to keep everything under control. So that's the waiting room. You can, as the host, and again, when you do act as Zoom master for an online speech contest, it's important that you are the host. If you started the meeting you will have hosting rights automatically. If you didn't start the meeting, ask the person who did to give you the hosting rights, because that will open up your dashboard to what you can see before you here. So let's get started. So we've come into our 30 minutes preparation time. We've got a few people sitting into our room who need to be here. The first thing that needs to be done as a Zoom master is to ensure that everyone is renamed appropriately. That's going to make it a lot easier for you in your role to manage moving people from place to place and just finding them very quickly, particularly if you end up with an audience that is 40, 50, even bigger. You want to be able to find your different officials and your contestants very quickly so you can address any concerns or move them around as they're needed to go. So for instance, let's start with a chief judge. So Mr. Mickey is going to be our chief judge, and you could just give him a simple abbreviation, or you can write out chief judge. It really doesn't matter, just as long as it's clear what role Mickey is. From there, you want to make sure that your timers are renamed. So let's make Donald our timer. And each contest has 2 timers. So per the rulebook, 2 timers. And so we want timer A and timer B. Now, timer A is going to be the one with the lights, providing the different colored backgrounds for our contestants to be able to follow along. And that's going to be done very much through the Zoom background functionality. So you can just see it here. When you go to choose virtual background, timer B is going to be the one managing that process. So changing background from green to yellow to red as the speaker speaks. So that's their role, is just to make sure that that all happens. And you can see that the color's changing behind me as we go. So with that, let's jump back to a nice Toastmaster blue and get on with it. Now timer B, who is going to be managing the stopwatch and the official time on the timer sheet, they also need to be renamed, but it's more critical that timer A is very obvious so contestants can be sure of who they're looking for when they're speaking. Beyond that, we also have judges, and judges should remain anonymous where possible. So a good renaming scheme for them is simply just Judge 1, Judge 2, Judge 3, and so on. Once the contest's over and we're into the thank yous and asking and congratulating contestants and thanking the officials for their assistance, then the judges can turn their video on and rename themselves to their actual name so that we can ensure that they are properly thanked and recognized. Other roles, contest Toastmaster, you can rename them as MC, Toastmaster, Chair, whatever suits. But again, just a name so that you can find them easily. The contestant, so let's assume now that Goofy is a contestant, and a simple naming scheme for them is simply just Speaker 1, Speaker 2, or just S1, S2, S3, depending on the speaking order of those contestants, which you should know well in advance if your contest planning team has been doing their preparations. The other role, of course, is the Sergeant-at-Arms, and it also helps if they're renamed appropriately. So SAA is a good naming scheme for a Sergeant-at-Arms, and then your tally counters as well. So let's just go back to being Goofy for a little bit. Oh, we'll keep him as Sergeant-at-Arms. So once we have all of the officials and all of the main participants, all of the stars of our show renamed, we can move on to the next step, which is assigning them roles within Zoom. Because some of your officials will need roles, particularly to help with managing certain elements of their function. So first and foremost is our chief judge. Our chief judge should be assigned as a co-host. And the reason for that is that gives them the ability to help out with muting people if there's interruptions and so on. If there's a particular incident where someone needs to be removed from the contest, the co-hosts have booting rights. They can evict someone from the room. And to give someone co-hosting rights is just as simple as going to the top right-hand corner here of the square and then saying make co-host. And yes, we want to make Mickey the co-host because he is chief judge. Other roles that should be co-hosts are timer A. Now again, this is the timer that's going to be using the lights. Making someone a co-host puts them to the top of the gallery list. So even if you end up with 40 or 50 or 60 people, the host and the co-hosts are going to be staying at the top of the speaker's screen. So it's easier for the contestants to find them and pin the timer to their screen so that they can ensure that they don't lose the timer and their lights throughout their presentation. So again, we can give the timer co-hosting rights as well. And then the other one who needs co-hosting rights is our Sergeant-Arms, again, for the same sort of reason. So being able to assist you with renaming people, muting people, unmuting people, but also booting people as well if necessary. So we can, let's add Goofy as a co-host. Now, this can simply be reversed as well. So once you've given someone co-hosting rights, if you need to, someone has to drop out and you need to reassign them, you can simply just remove co-hosting rights, co-hosting permissions, just as simple as clicking that to remove. So there we go. And that's dealing with co-hosts. So we're going through that pre-contest phase. We've come in, we've talked about the waiting room and who to let in and when. We've talked about renaming our participants and our officials. We've gone through the co-hosting and who needs co-hosting rights to be able to manage an online contest effectively. And before we get started, the one last thing that's always good practice to do is to set up the breakout rooms that you're going to need before the contest begins. It's just going to make your life a lot easier and smooth the whole process out. Now, if you look down at the bottom of my dashboard, there's 4 little squares here in the bottom right-hand corner called breakout rooms. If I click on that there, it gives me the option to establish breakout rooms. Now, we can do that automatically and it'll just randomly assign everyone to a breakout room, or we can set up our rooms manually. And that's what we want to do for an online contest. We want to set up those rooms manually because then we can create and decide which rooms we want and who's going to go into them. So it gives us a starter breakout room, as you can just see here on the screen. First thing to do is to rename that. There's a couple of breakout rooms that are required for an online speech contest, and there are others that are very much sort of optional depending on what particular need you have for them. So the first one that we really do need is the tally counters. And that's going to allow, once all of the contestants have finished speaking and all of the judges have finished judging, you'll use this room to move the tally counters and the chief judge to tabulate all the votes and work out who the winners are. So that's the first room that you want to set up. Now the second one, and again, down here at the bottom, add room. The second room that we want to add up is a room for protests. Now, most times you never have a protest in a contest at all. Mostly everything just goes by the rules, but occasionally the contestants or judges may raise a protest if they feel that someone is breaking the rules. And because that process needs to take place outside of the main room, having a protest room already set up means that if a protest does eventuate, you can assign all of the relevant people to the protest room and take them out of the main room so that they can have a private discussion away from the main audience. So that's how we set up a breakout room. In terms of setting up who needs to go into them, it's as simple as clicking on this blue assign button here. Now, as you can see, it gives you an option of all of the people in the room at the time, and you can assign people that need to be. So for instance, we might assign Chief Judge Mickey because he's going to be in the tally counter room overseeing the tallying. We might also assign Goofy and Donald. And if we do that, you'll see it's got number 3 there now. And if I expand the tally counter tab, we can see that Mickey, Goofy, and Donald are now all assigned to the tally counter room. When I eventually click the blue button in the bottom right-hand corner to open all rooms, each of those officials is going to receive an invitation to join that room, and they'll be taken out of the main audience to, in this case, tally votes and work out who the winners are going to be. Now, it's important as a Zoom master, have this set up before you get to the point of the contest where you need to be moving them out, because if you can prepare things in advance, it just means the whole event goes that much more smoothly. So we'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like and how that works when we get to that part of the contest. But for now, you can just close out of that and it will sit there in the background waiting for when we need it. And so that is effectively all you need for the preparation phase of your contest, is to make sure that All the officials arrive early, that they are renamed, that they're given the appropriate rights, that they are pre-assigned to breakout rooms that you know they're going to be needed for. And then beyond that, it's getting ready for the contest Toastmaster to kick everything off. Now, during a contest, the role of the Zoom Master is fairly straightforward for the International and the Humorous speech contest. There's not a lot of fiddling, which makes your life a lot easier and hopefully will mean that the whole event goes a lot more smoothly. To start off, your contest Toastmaster is going to introduce the event, and again, as the contest Toastmaster, there's a slideshow that is recommended that they use that will help them with providing the ground rules to people. I'll just show that to you here now. So it's really just a simple thing of, welcome slide, and then from there, the house rules for the audience about staying muted, keeping video off. And the reason that we keep the video off during contests is, one, it reduces bandwidth, but it also reduces distractions for the speakers as well, particularly if you've got a background. There's a few different ones that might have colors in them that might distract the contestant from the actual timers, green, yellow, and red. So keeping the video off allows the contestants to focus on the people that they really need to be focusing on. Not using chat during the contests. In the same way that we wouldn't be speaking at a contest while contestants are competing, it's important to remind our audience members not to use chat during the contest because, one, it's distracting. Two, they might be giving support to the contestants, which again is not really on. And it just, as I said, it just becomes a bit of a distraction overall. It gets in the way of a fun and fair contest. And then finally, and this comes back to the waiting room, so no audience members being admitted while the contestants are speaking. Again, in the same way that sergeants at arms in a real life face-to-face contest would be manning the doors and ensuring that no one walks into the contest room while the contestants are speaking. As the Zoom Master, you have the ability to control who comes in and out of the waiting room, and it's best just to wait until a break. So after a contestant's finished speaking, you can allow whoever might be in the waiting room back into the main room. Just appropriate breaks during the session, just making sure that we're not distracting our speakers and giving them every opportunity that we can to do well. And then finally, there's the speaking order. This is something that the contest Toastmaster, the chief judge, and so on, the contestants will have determined beforehand during the contestant briefing, working out who's speaking and then getting all of this filled out. Again, that makes it a lot easier for you, and it means that the audience knows who's speaking when. There's no surprises, and we don't get questions about, well, who's first speaker, who's second speaker, and so on. It's just there in front of everyone. So that is that part of it. So for instance, let's just assume right now that the contest Toastmaster has started the contest, they've gone through, they've welcomed everyone, they've introduced all the rules, and now they're at the point of introducing the first contestant. There's a few things to be aware of in this part of the contest. The first one, as tempting as it is, do not spotlight the speaker. If you spotlight the speaker, it interferes with their ability to pin the timer to their main screen, which is something that we only sort of worked out reasonably recently. The best thing to do is to encourage either yourself or the contest Toastmaster, encouraging that all audience members, instead of having gallery view, in the top right-hand corner, that they select speaker view. And that will allow them to focus on the person who's actually speaking, who is not Goofy, but is me. But that's okay. So we can come back out of gallery. So having everyone set up in speaker view allows the contestants to pin the timer and ensure that they can see the lights when they come on. So part of the Zoom Master role is to ensure that the contestants are all set up, right, from an audio visual point of view before they get started. So as they sort of get prepared, just making sure that sound check, video check, that they have the timer pinned and they can see who they are, and then they'll start speaking. And that process will basically continue through each speaker until the contest is done. So part of your role as Zoom Master is to manage any technical failures that might happen. So because technology is involved, there's always the risk that something may break down or something unexpected may happen. Preparation helps a lot with that, and I can't stress that enough. Prior preparation prevents poor performance. So please do take the time to practice and to try and iron out or troubleshoot any issues before they occur. So as things happen through the contest, you're just making sure that all of the technology is working fine. You'll be managing the waiting room in conjunction with the Sergeant Arms, so making sure that nobody is entering the contests while contestants are speaking. And then that's effectively what you need to do during the contest. So once you get to the end of that, the judges will start tabulating their final votes. And then we get to the breakout room section. So moving our tally counters and our chief judge to the breakout room. Now, the chief judge and the judges will have worked out beforehand what the best way to get the results to the ballot counters to the chief judge is going to be. It could be an email, it could be a snapshot, it could be a text message or a Facebook message. It could be any number of ways, but that's for them to worry about. Your role as the Zoom Master is to get them into the breakout room. And so we're going to come back now to our breakout room box here on the bottom right. Now, when it reaches the appropriate time to move the chief judge and our tally counters into the counting room, it's as simple as, if we've got them already pre-assigned, to simply hit open all rooms. Now, what that will do is it will invite each of those officials to come into the room, and they can simply just hit join to join the room. Now, what you'll see is that currently they're all showing gray circles. That means that they haven't gone to the room. But if I click a couple of examples here, so for instance, Goofy, and over here, we've got Mickey. Once they enter the room, that dot will go green. So that just shows that they're in the room and you can track where they are. At that point, they will do their thing. They'll be tallying up votes and so on. Once they're done, they can either choose to return to the main room by themselves. And again, they'll do that just by themselves by clicking Leave Breakout Room. Or alternatively, you can close down the room. Really up to you. The chief judge will let you know how they want to play that, and that's totally fine. So let's leave breakout room there. Cool. And then once that's all done, we can close the rooms. Now, in the event that a protest occurs and you have to reassign the chief judge in particular from the tally counter room to the protest room to deal with the protest before they can get to the tallying, it is a fairly simple process. You simply click on their name here in the tally counter list and just click Move To and then Protests. So that will reassign them to the protest room. What the chief judge will need to do is click on their breakout room button again, and it will have changed from Join Tally Counter Room to Join Protest Room. And then they can click that and go through the same process that we just talked about. It is as simple as that. And again, you can move them back by doing the same process when it's needed. So that's that part of the process on how to deal with the speech contest section. So what we're going to cover next is what else that you need to worry about. So protests and the tallying is almost where your role ends. Assuming that everything's been done properly, it will have gone very smoothly. There won't be a huge amount of trouble and difficulty because, again, the very, 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 very strong recommendation for all the Zoom Masters and indeed anyone involved in organising online speech contests or participating in online speech contests this year. It's our first time doing it. As useful as I hope this session has been, nothing is going to be a substitute for doing practice sessions, doing rehearsals, jumping in and experimenting with some of these controls before the day. So as a Zoom Master, set up a meeting for you to just jump in and practice with creating breakout rooms, closing breakout rooms, renaming people, assigning co-hosts, taking it back. all of those things, managing the waiting room, all of those things that you'll need to be doing on the day. So if you gather a few people together, jump in and have a bit of a practice session, it's going to help you a lot more than just reading about it. Because as Toastmasters, we learn by doing, and doing it in a practice environment is going to give you more confidence and more competence when you get to the real event. So there you have it. We've effectively covered the entire role of the Zoom Master for an online speech contest for our district for this year. Now, as I said, we've gone through the fundamentals. So everything that you need to know about beforehand, during the contest, and dealing with any particular intricacies that might pop up. Now, remember, while it is easier than it seems, when technology is involved, there's always the potential for a few glitches. However, like all things in Toastmasters, there is a huge support network out there for you. There'll be people there on the day to lend assistance, and beforehand, if you have questions, there's a whole support structure to help you out. So working through your area director, your division director, the division program quality directors, or the district program quality director, there's a whole structure of people out there who can support you with questions that you might have and just helping you feel ready for this event. Because we want it to go smoothly, we really do. And I'll leave you then with a simple thought. So while it's our first time doing online speech contests this year, it's a wonderful opportunity for us to develop new skills and to build our confidence and stretch ourselves in new directions. Because as Toastmasters, our fourth core value is excellence. Now, excellence, however, doesn't mean perfection. It means doing your best, preparing as much as you can, and then learning from the experience so that you can do a better job next time. It's not about getting it 100% right on the first go, because that's very, very unlikely, but it's ensuring that at the end of the day, we have fair and fun contests that select a winner that can continue on. Everything else is gravy on top. So with that, thank you so much for your time and participation. I hope this has been a useful exercise for you. And again, if you do have questions, please reach out to those who can support you. It's going to be a very interesting year this year with online speech contests, but I wish you the best of luck. And with that, have fun in the role, learn lots, make the most of this opportunity to grow in a new direction. And I'm looking forward to seeing you running a successful online speech contest in the very near future. So well done, good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, wherever you are.